The Room of Dark, a story by Gilbert Wright, illustrated by JohnF, and produced by me, Peter Groveman. Dedicated to Henry Hacker for making this all happen, and to Lauren and Josh Kudish. The future is yours. In my country, when two fellows become angry enough to kill the other because of a lady or some matter, it is custom to arrange a duel. From such a duel as we arrange, the trouble between these two fellows will be settled, believe me. The Committee for Duels prepares a house of one room so that, on the closing of the door, the room is dark. Fine sand without little stones is spread all over the floor. The bare feet of a man make not the smallest sound walking on such a floor. The two fellows are made to take off all their clothes. They must enter the dark room naked. The committee puts one fellow in a corner of the room, and across from him, in that corner, the other fellow. In one of the other corners, the committee puts a live rattlesnake of good size. The committee leaves, the door is shut quickly, and the duel begins. Outside, the people wait for half a minute. If the winner has not come out by that time, the committee piles empty oil cans against the door, completely over the top. The people of the town now go about their business because it may be many hours or even days before the winner opens the door that makes the cans all crash down. People all over the village, day or night, will hear the loud noise that the cans make when they come crashing down. Only the winner of the duel will come out. On the closing of the door, there will be a very short time when you still have the image of your enemy in the mind's eye. You can rush straight across the room to his position and perhaps finish him, but you must act very fast before the image goes. Both fellows could rush, but I've never heard of it. The duel is now an affair of patience, great care, and much thought. One smart fellow may think of the method to work a trick on the other, but if the trick is not successful, it will be the smart fellow who remains behind in the room of dark. Much will depend upon the control of the mind because, after some hours in complete dark, the mind can grow unreliable, and a fellow may do something foolish, and so his enemy will find his position in the room of dark. If a fellow loses control after a day or two, it will not be that fellow who crashes down the cans. There are reasons for putting the rattlesnake in the room of dark. It is great danger to both men equally, not caring who it might bite. We also believe that the snake will make the fellow who is most afraid even more fearful, so that the braver fellow has a better chance to win. There was much anger between Demundo and Pito. Both of these fellows were my cousins because in our village, if a fellow is not your brother, he is certain to be your cousin. Demundo is a cousin not liked by me and others. He is about 30 years old, dark, strong, and rough, a lot of hair and a beard. Demundo believes he is the best and strongest man in the village, and believes all the girls love him. In this, there is truth. 5 times in almost 2 years he has dueled, and each time it was he who crashed down the cans. Never did he receive even a small wound, and the times of his winnings were never more than 1 hour. He brags that only cowards take the time of 2 or 3 days. Ridiculous! Demundo gets hungry and misses his girlfriends. For months at a time, Demundo works on a ship and sails to many faraway places. When he returns, he brings presents for his girlfriends. The presents are bracelets, ribbons, combs, candies, perfumes, and the things that women would like. Pito is also my cousin. He is very well liked by everyone. He is slim and has a mustache that he has never trimmed. Pito is 3 years older than me. He is no longer a boy. His voice is deep. Many girls in our village notice him, but when we all go out upon the beach to gather the harvest of the shore, Pito digs with Angia, and their hands meet together under the sand. Angia is some years younger than Pito, but has much charm. One day, Pito and Angia and I dug together. Demundo came up to us and looked down at Angia. We did not show that we knew he was there. We kept digging for clams. Demundo dropped a little bottle of shining glass and gold into the sand right near Angia's hand. She looked at it, but did not look up at Demundo. She dug all around the bottle, but did not touch it. Demundo bent down and took the bottle and twisted the top off. There was a strong, sweet smell of some foreign flower. Demundo held the bottle very close to Angia. Angia took the bottle from Demundo, put the top back, and gave the closed bottle to Pito. Pito stood up. Demundo stood up. Pito offered him back the bottle, and Demundo struck it from his hand. He said, "I, Demundo, gave that foreign perfume to Angia for a present, little boy." "I give presents to Angia," said Pito. His voice began very deep, but then got shaky. Demundo called Pito all sorts of names, telling him he was just a boy and not a man. It was getting late. Pito stood near Demundo and spat in Demundo's face. According to our customs, a friend of Demundo's led him one way, and I, being Pito's friend, took his arm and led him the other. Angia stood where we had been digging. She was looking down at the bottle of perfume shining in the sand. She put down her hand and reached for the bottle. That night, not much was said at Pito's house about the duel which was to take place the next day at noon. Custom has it that you must never ask a young man who has crashed down the cans how he did his winning. He may have to fight again, and so does not want his method known. Pito's 3 uncles had advice for him on how to fight in the room of dark. "When the door is shut, Pito," said one uncle, "squat down quickly in your corner. Hold your knife with the point up, so if Demundo rushes, the image is in his mind. He'll see you standing. He will strike too high. Then you will rise into him." "No, no, no," said the other uncle. "Move to the left. As the door closes, move left. You'll get him when he arrives." "Demundo will count his steps," said the third uncle. "There are 15 to each wall in the room. When the count of his steps brings him to where he thinks you to be, he will strike. My advice to you is to stay close to the wall at all times. Then you will at least know where something is. That will be of comfort." "Stay close to the wall? Oh no," said one uncle. "The snake will come all along the wall. He'll go all the way around the room, keeping close to the wall. He seeks a hole through which he may escape. The snake will rattle, and Demundo will know your position." "The snake will rattle not because he sees you, Pito, but because he feels the heat from your body. This frightens him, and the trembling of his tail sends forth the rattle. If you hear the rattle, you will know that either you or Demundo is close to the snake." "Lie down in the sand and cover your whole body with sand," said an uncle. "When the snake comes along the wall, he will crawl all over you without rattling. The heat from your body will not come through the sand. Should Demundo be close by the snake will rattle at him." "More can be done with the sand," offered another uncle. "Mount the sand against one ear. It will happen that if Demundo moves by stopping, crawling, or in any other manner, he will disturb the grains of sand under his weight. Then you will know where he is. It is very important, Pito, to keep track of time. This may be done by the sound of the village. Cows asking to be milked at sundown, dogs howling at moonrise, and roosters calling at dawn." "Never believe," said the oldest uncle, "that the snake must rattle before he strikes. If you move, keep your body low. Never did I hear the snake rattle. The first calling of the roosters, I began to hear the dying of my enemy. After some hours, these sounds stopped, and I came out of the room of dark because I no longer had an enemy." By now, I was finished sharpening Pito's knife and looked to see if Pito had received confidence from the wisdom of the uncles. I could see that he had. 5 times Demundo has come out of the room of dark. Each time it has been under 1 hour. "He's too much luck," said an uncle quietly. "He must have a method of perfection." Peter looked at me and we stood and walked away together. I gave him his knife. He thanked me for taking so much time and precision in sharpening the knife. By noon, the committee had prepared the room. The sun was bright and shone fully on the house, and all who desired went in and closed the door to inspect if the room was truly dark. 2 sparks of sun were seen in the roof, and a boy was sent with soft mud to the top of the house. He covered over the holes with mud. Everyone who came out now said the room was truly dark. A fellow had come with a rattlesnake of good size in a sack. A member of the committee shook the sack. The snake rattles well. Demundo stood with 2 friends outside the door. He was laughing and talking to his friends. He was telling them he would be glad to go into the room of dark and fight, It was cool in the room and away from the sun. He would take a nap because he had had a lot to drink the night before, and then he would take care of his business in the room and then crash down the cans. Demundo had plans for the evening. Pito and his friends stood outside the room, and no one spoke a word. Angia came to stand near the room of dark in a beautiful dress. She had not been seen by anyone since Pito had insulted Demundo on the beach. She had stayed in her house and spoke to no one, as was custom to do. It was also custom that she must come and look a long time at Pito, and then go and look a long time at Demundo. When she came to Pito, she did not come very close. She just stood and looked at him. There was a silent message in her face she was trying to send to Pito. She wanted him to understand something, but was not allowed to say. She did not smile at Pito, but then she went to Demundo. Her back was towards us, and her face could not be seen as she looked at him. Demundo smiled and put both of his hands on her shoulders. She then put both of her hands on his head and rubbed his hair over and over again. Then she turned and went back to her house. Demundo called to her, "Tonight, little one, do not change your dress. We're going out to have fun." We, along with Pito, were sick to our stomach. We could not believe what we had just seen. Pito and Angia were friends since they were children. Why would she touch Demundo and rub his head? On Pito's face was a very strange look. He did not believe what had just happened. He was trying to think, why Angia would such in a way touch Demundo? When a man puts his hands on the girl's shoulders and she puts her hands on his head, it is a sign of love. But it can also mean farewell, as when lovers part from each other for a long time. We all expected her to make this greeting with Pito, for he was her true love, but she had stood back from Pito, then gone to Demundo and made the greeting with him. Unthinkable. Demundo put his clothes to the north of the door and entered the room of dark. Pito put his clothes to the south of the door and entered the room of dark. One man, the head of the committee, went inside the room with the snake. He put his hand on the door and called in, "Farewell to one of you." He shut the door. We all waited for the half of a minute. Nothing happened. Then the committee began piling empty cans outside the door. But before the cans were halfway, a scream from the room of dark. It was the voice of Pito. After a time, no one had come out of the room. There had been no more sounds. The cans were now piled up to cover the top of the door. People all around were talking of Pito's loud scream. Some said it was a scream of pain. Others thought it was a scream of anger or hate. Many people who liked Pito stood by the door all night. Angia watched too, but apart from everyone, and no one spoke to her. I went back to my house in the morning to help with the chores. Our house is some distance from the room of dark, but as I was fastening the wire gates, I heard the crashing of the cans. I ran with all my power, but when I got to the room of dark, Pito was already dressed, and the committee was examining the methods of Demundo. The handle of Demundo's knife was hollow, and the jeweled plate at the butt unscrewed. It was in the handle that Demundo kept a small flashlight. The light was no bigger than a thumb, but in the room of dark, it was a strong light. There is no trouble to kill a man if you are behind such a light. The flashing of the light had caused Pito to scream out in anger. Then he had reached down quickly and thrown a handful of sand at the light. The sand went into Demundo's eyes. He turned off the light because, being now blinded, the light was of danger to him. Also, it was believed that he had dropped the light. It was found in another part of the room from where Pito and Demundo last met. Pito's uncles were gathered around him. "It is plain that you were close together and that you knew his direction because of the snake," said an uncle. "But how, Pito, could you know just when to strike?" "When I am old, my uncles," said Pito, "I may speak of how I came to crash down the cans if the occasion is of importance. But that will be many years." He went to where Angia stood. She looked at Pito with such love in her eyes, and only I heard what they said. "It was long, Angia," said Pito. "I could not understand why you made such a greeting with Demundo." He brought her hands to his face and smelled them. "You've washed your hands well." "Very well," said Angia. "You know I love you only." "Good," said Pito. "The perfume Demundo gave you on the beach, I never want to smell again.